This is Kentucky Afield Radio. This is Ron Rohde, Kentucky Afield's first host back in 1953. Now, I'm proud to present Charlie Baglin.
Fall means 30 million different types of hunting seasons. It means football. It means spectacular fall fishing. We go inside outdoors with 3 of the 7 district fish biologists with the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife. We'll find out what's heating up as the weather cools down. And if we don't cover your specific part of the state, you can still apply what's said to your favorite fishing hole. We promise. We wet the first line at Lake Cumberland on Kentucky Afield Radio.
Calling to order the Fellowship of the One That Got Away. Yeah. We've got a new member with us today, my son, Kevin.
Well, I'd been trying to reel in this huge fish for like 10 minutes. Yeah. I finally got her right up next to the boat. Yeah. But the net guy, my dad, was just too slow.
Don't let the fish in the Great Fall Fishing get away. Get your Kentucky fishing license at fw.ky.gov.
Yeah. Of all the creatures of Halloween, the one that should send a chill up your spine is deer. I'm wildlife biologist Tina Brunges. It's breeding season. During this time of year, we see a 50% jump in deer-car collisions. If you're on the road, be on your toes. Like a ghost, deer can appear out of nowhere. This deer hazard season, drive smart, Kentucky. Slow down and let nature run its course.
A message from the Department of Fish and Wildlife and the Kentucky Office of Highway Safety. Charlie Baglin in on Kentucky Afield Radio. Welcome to the show. Spring and fall are when fishing takes center stage, and on the show this week, we chat with some of the voices that you hear every week on our show in the Fishing Report. Those district fisheries biologists with the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife. There are 7 of them, and we will talk with 3 today, covering 3 areas of the state. Kevin Fry in eastern Kentucky, waters such as Paintsville Lake, Dewey and Fish Trap Lake. And then Fred Howells will join us from Greenbow and Cave Run area. And we begin down in the Lake Cumberland area with the man with the plan, John Williams. And with Laurel Lake and Big South Fork, among others, John, I bet folks in your area are ready for fall fishing.
I'm sure they are, Charlie. One thing we're blessed with in the southeast is a variety of types of water to fish. So whether you're a river fisherman or like big reservoirs or small reservoirs, there's something for everyone here in the southeast. What
are the species of choice for fall?
Well, actually, we have a variety. One good thing about if you like large reservoirs, right now at Lake Cumberland we've got the striped bass, and in the summertime they're pretty deep and sticking out cool water. But once these surface temperatures cool down in the fall, you can experience some jumps, some surface fishing, which is I think some of the most exciting fishing you can do. And, lots of time these schools of stripers will get on the surface during the early morning hours or late afternoon, and even sometimes during the middle of the day, and you can have some fast action really fast.
Well, fall fishing is all triggered on water temperature. Just because it's fall in September, it's also fall in December. So I would assume just because the calendar says fall doesn't mean it's going to be great fishing.
I think really starts, right about by the calendar fall season. When you get into late September, you start getting the cool nights and days in the 70s, and the surface temperature starts cooling down. You kind of break up the top of the thermocline and makes that surface water cool enough for some of those fish species that normally are deeper, sticking out that cool water. Once the surface temperature cools enough and gets into the low 70s, mid to low 70s, and into the 60s, then that would be the best action. So from really late September through October probably is the best.
Favorite spots, fall fishing. Do you see more fall fishing on Laurel Lake, Cumberland River?
Probably, Laurel, most of our major reservoirs, the boating traffic is gone by early fall. And so the anglers, I think, kind of come back to the lake. And the temperatures are, quite frankly, nicer days to fish. It's not miserable hot. And, in the summertime, a lot of people fish at night, I think, partly for the fish, but partly because it's more comfortable in the late evenings. But in the fall, you can go out in the middle of the day and it's 75 degrees and a nice breeze, and it's a beautiful, beautiful time to be on the lake. And when the fishing's good, I think those anglers come back to the lakes during the daytime.
What is it about a fish that makes it hungrier come fall?
fish that like the cooler water can become stressed during the summer, and once the temperatures get so warm, the fish is stressed out and they don't eat as well. But those cooler temperatures kind of refreshing, eating a lot over winter, kind of fatten up the fall and make it through the winter. So it's really aggressive feeding in the fall. Cooler temperatures kind of stimulate that.
So they're just like you and me. We like to pork up a little bit for the wintertime.
Right.
Oh, yeah, fish could grow a beard. So what advice do you have for the first-timer or for the person who doesn't does that much or could use a few reminders? What is your advice for gear? And then follow up, if you would, with presentation.
Like I mentioned, in the fall you get a lot of surface activity, and so anything that can imitate shad, a lot of times in the fall you'll see the shad schooling on the surface, and then fish will bust those. So I know a lot of anglers just throw surface baits or some kind of spinner that creates a lot of commotion on top, or even just casting jigs and grubs to those surface fish. But individual anglers have individual lures that they prefer, but something that's making a commotion on the surface is great for fall.
Any changes in your gear?
Not a lot, really. I think medium action spinning reel, catch a variety of fish. I'm a kind of an avid smallmouth fisherman, and the same type of gear will work, basically year round. You just might have to slow it down once the water cools down quite a bit, and the metabolism of the fish slows down as you get more into the early winter. Slow down and don't fish it as fast, but you can use the same type of bait.
So you're saying slow the presentation down for fall?
Later fall.
Have you heard any good fishing tales? Have you heard any good lies? What's the best you've heard yet?
I didn't realize that anglers lied much about their catch. I've heard that, but I've always been a pretty straightforward fisherman. But actually, that's probably a lie. I lie about what I catch too. But the best thing is don't measure or weigh your catch, and release them, and that way you can call them whatever size you want to, and go from there. But once you put the scale to it, and you actually know what it weighs, then that makes it a little tougher.
I think we hit this point, the same point back in the spring, that if you don't ever bother to weigh it, you can only go by your best estimated guess. And if it really is a 5-pounder, but you say it's 10, well, no way to ever know, but at least you're not deliberately telling a fib.
Right, and typically the longer the time span between when you actually caught the fish and you're telling the story, they can grow a lot in between that period. So, maybe the first day you caught it was 5-pounder. By the time you're telling it a month later, it could be a 10-pounder easily.
Fish grow year-round, and they never stop growing, but they never grow as fast as from the moment you catch it to when you're talking about it the next day.
That's correct.
John Williams, you want to do everything you can to help the angler in your area. Where is your office, and what kind of resources can folks get if they come to pay you a visit?
We've recently moved our office from, we were in Regensburg, Kentucky, but in the past year we've moved to Somerset, Kentucky. It's just off Highway 27 on to 135 Realty Lane in Somerset. And if you're coming into Somerset down 27, you can turn right across from the Bob Evans restaurant and go right to our office. And in our area, we cover 15 counties in southeast Kentucky. We have a variety of literature on our lakes and streams in the area, and essentially all the literature that the department provides, such as boating and fishing access, fishing ID, how to fish, a variety of literature, and we can hopefully answer any other questions that the public has when they come by and visit us here at the Somerset office. What
are your hours?
Typically from 8 to 4:30. That can change. We do a lot of field work, especially in the spring and some in the fall at night. So when we're working at night, we typically work half a day and then take the afternoon off and work that evening.
And you're in the Eastern time zone, right?
That's correct. We're in the Eastern time zone. At the office we're located, there's also a wildlife biologist, Steve Dean. So if you have any wildlife questions, you can come there too. And we also have some forestry personnel. So it's kind of a one-stop shop for any of your fish and wildlife needs.
Well, before we let you go, what's your one single piece of sage advice for folks coming to your part of the state?
Well, as always, be careful, wear a life jacket when you're on the water, and enjoy I think we have one of the prettiest areas in the state and a variety of water bodies. So, like I say, whether you like reservoir fishing or stream fishing, important thing to get outside and enjoy.
Thank you very much, sir. Again, that's John Williams, District Fisheries Biologist in southeastern Kentucky. I appreciate what you said about life jackets. Your life jacket's got your back, even if you think it's silly and doesn't apply to you. Up next, Cave Run and surrounding waters. Don't move a muscle. This is Charlie Baglin on Kentucky Afield Radio. We're back on Kentucky Afield Radio. My name is Charlie Baglin. This is one of two specials we will do this season on fall fishing. These are with Kentucky's District Fisheries Biologist, and that spot is held by one of the nicest guys on the planet, Fred Howells, in northeastern Kentucky, Muskie Central, Cave Run area. Where is your headquarters, Frederick?
We're located pretty much exactly in Farmers, Kentucky. Our office is located at Minor Clark Fish Hatchery. There's two entities there at the hatchery. There's the people that raise the fish, and then the Northeast Fishery District.
So that's very close to, let's say, Moorhead?
It is. It's within 5-6 miles of Moorhead.
Well, it's fall fishing time. I guess first question is, even if it's fall, what is it about fall that triggers good fishing? What is it you're looking for specifically?
Well, good fishing generally, or anglers have better success in the spring and then in the fall. And in the fall, it's pretty much based on temperatures. There's probably variances in degrees which get fish of different species going. For instance, muskie. A lot of the muskie anglers will say once that temperature hits 74 and starts to go below, muskie fishing really turns it on. It's basically that they're coming out of the summer where it's hotter, their metabolism shoots up in the summer, but as it starts to reach that optimum level for them to eat, which is when the water gets a little cooler, then they begin to eat. Perhaps to put on stores for the winter, but I think it's more of if you analogize it, it would be like people in the springtime will start to get out when that temperature starts hitting 60 degrees. You'll see them come out. Once it gets hot, they go into the air conditioning. Once in the fall, it starts getting 70s, they come out.
So just because the first day of fall has passed, but the last day isn't here, because that will stretch all the way into almost Christmas of the autumn season will. What are the optimum times for fall fishing?
I would say optimum's going to be for all species somewhere around 65 degrees probably. Generally speaking, a time frame would be, and this is generally mid-September through the first part of November probably.
What are the hot spots in the northeast part of Kentucky?
Obviously, Cave Run for muskie and crappie and bass. Smallmouth, we have, almost a lot of streams have them. It's hard to pick a hot spot.
Cave Run Lake, we know for certain. I'm wondering about Greenbow. I'm wondering about Grayson Lake. I'm wondering about Tigard's Creek.
Upper parts of Grayson probably will produce, if you're bass fishing, and then perhaps a little later on in the later fall, you might get into some hybrid stripers. They're coming on. We're now in the third year of stocking or thereabouts, and those fish will probably be in the 15, 18-inch range. So if you can find shallow flats where your shad are concentrating now, and they are moving into the shallows now, so the upper reaches and any mud flats you find. Greenbow Lake on Greenbow Lake, if you're fishing for bass, and it's extremely difficult to fish there because we do stock 11,500 trout. We'll be stocking them in October and then again a little later on in the wintertime. And those bigger fish hit trout. That we see them a lot at night, and they're deep. Because Greenbow is very clear. Sometimes we can see 20 feet down, but you see them in dense cover, where there's not a lot of dense cover there, but that's where we see them. The trout fishing will pick up, like I said, due to the stocking at Greenbow. Tigard's Creek, any riffle complexes you find should produce probably better smallmouth fishing, in the upper reaches of it. A great fall trip for Tigers Creek would be starting at the Route 182, where you would be real close to the entrance to Carter Cave State Park, and on up for about 5 or 6 miles. It's kind of hard to put in there, but if you can find a place to put in, that's a fantastic float.
So what's your favorite spot, Fred? Do you dare tell?
Well, you know, this is a problem I have where I used to fish a lot before I got into fisheries. And then I go out and I electrofish, or we electrofish, and we find these fish, and we know where they are. I go back out and try to catch them, and I fail miserably. I hate to admit that, but if, you know, the Licking River probably, you would have to float it, but in certain places there is a walleye fishery, though limited, but people can catch them, smallmouth fishery, muskie, and even carryover rainbows, meaning that anglers do have good success with 15-inch, 16-inch rainbows way downstream. But the Licking River probably would be one of my favorite places to go. Or
Licking River is nice. I have canoed that many times. I don't know as far as Cincinnati, but close. We would put in at Falmouth, I remember, and we would paddle north. So a beautiful stretch of water.
It is. We just last week or the week before sampled a pool there right below or on the Blue Licks State Park property. One pool, and we yielded 8 muskie. It was like, and these are good-sized muskies. So, you know, the Licking River is stocked with muskie, and it happens to be the place where the hatchery replenishes, or it acquires its brood stock to spawn those fish to stock the whole state. Now those fish are put back in the water when they're done, back in the Licking River when they're done spawning them.
How does your gear and your presentation and such change from summer fishing into fall?
I think the most important thing for anglers to do is to fish slow, to fish slower than they usually do.
Is this the time of year to go to try to find a hidden spot maybe you hadn't tried before?
Yeah, I would think so. You know, in terms of the hidden spots, they would, in my mind, would be more stream-oriented, where maybe you don't have as much pressure as a lake situation. And, you know, fall fishing for muskie in Fox Creek, say, in Fleming County, that's one that's not publicized much. There are muskie in it. Same way as Salt Creek, which is in Lewis County. It's a small section, but muskie have been found there. And in terms of smallmouth, you know, generally speaking, you're not going to find 16, 18-inch fish in the streams that we have. In the Licking River, I would say probably, and perhaps Tigers Creek, maybe in Kinnickinnick, but these small out-of-the-way places like Christie Creek, which it's mentioned on our publications about Triplet Creek in Round County, and Christie Creek is a smaller trib of Triplet Creek. And in that stream, when I was fishing it, I caught a 14-inch smallmouth. I mean, that's not bad. To me, that's exceptional for a stream.
Excellent. But here's the key question of the interview. What's the best lie you've heard all year?
Well, I just heard one, but the guy he thought it was serious. And you don't want to come out and say, yeah, well, you know, 60-pound flatheads coming out in good numbers from Grayson Lake. That's something like, well, maybe, but you know, I thought about that, and when it comes to fishermen and maybe stretching the truth, when I first started, I was conducting tours at the hatchery for little children, and this is like preschool kids, and I'd always ask them, all right, show me with your hands, by spreading them apart, the biggest fish you've ever caught. And inevitably, every one of those kids had already caught fish that were close to 3 feet long. And so I would tell them, you are spot on to be a fisherman.
Absolutely. Your office there in Farmers, Kentucky, Fred Howells, wants to aid the fishermen, fisherwomen, any way they can. So what resources can your office provide for folks that's just maybe a phone call away?
They could call here, and depending on our studies, we will electrofish for bass, crappie, net for crappie. We do studies on all the game fish, and some of them are only conducted one time a year. Some are conducted in the spring and fall. And so they can call and they can say, well, I'd like to know what you found and where. And we can tell them what we found. So we know where fish are. And it's usually a lot different than our catch is greater because we use electricity as opposed to rod and reel. So they can call here. We can give them what information we have on how we perceive a fishery, where the fish might be. We can also, we put out fishing attractors or brush attractors. Once a year we'll do this, and we have a map of the locations of those, so they can come here and find these sites, which are all GPS. So the general angler, that's probably it in a nutshell.
So a sage piece of advice for anyone, the slow presentation you mentioned, but would that be it?
As far as I know, Charlie, that I'm sure there's a lot more that one could give, but that's what if I had to surmise it, would be slow your presentation down.
And do you advise texting and fishing versus texting and driving?
Texting and fishing, yes. Do not text and drive.
Fred, thank you. In the event you have not heard enough about fishing, we will still have our encapsulated 2.5-minute fishing report coming up. And then we'll be back with Kevin Fry, who is the ruler of the roost on all those fabulous places in eastern Kentucky. Stay with us. I'm Charlie Baglan. This is Kentucky Afield Radio. This is Kentucky Afield Radio. My name is Charlie Baglan, and I encourage you to sign up for our Kentucky Afield newsletter. What it is an email-type newsletter. An email, you get it once a week. We get your email address. We use it for nothing else. We don't send you a bunch of bull. You get it once a week, and it covers 2 shows, Kentucky Afield Radio and TV. Let you know what Tim Farmer and the crew are doing on their side of the hallway. Go to kyafield.com. You scroll down the page, you will see the icon there that says Kentucky Afield Newsletter. Click on that. It takes about 12 seconds tops, and you're done. Seems like this show has been nothing but one huge fishing report, yet we will bring you our short, sweet 2.5-minute report right now.
Hi, this is John Williams with a fishing report for Southeast Kentucky. At Lake Cumberland, late reports are striped bass. Fishing's been good. Some of the stripers are in jumps now. Catch those casting about any type of surface bait. Just watch for the jumps, usually around mid-morning. As with the federal shutdown, if that's still ongoing, some ramps on some of our lakes could be limited, so keep that in mind. As far as we know at Laurel Lake, owned by the U.S. Forest Service, those ramps are closed in the meantime. Perhaps your best bet would be going to some of the state-owned lakes or smaller lakes in our area. One lake we own, Cedar Creek Lake in Lincoln County, is great for big bass, so those offer good fall fishing. Also, a place you could go in Mount Vernon, Lake Linville, offers good bluegill and catfish fishing. Those can be caught on worms or the bluegills on crickets, and there's good bank access all the way around the lake, so give those a try. And as always, good luck and good fishing.
Hi, everybody. This is Fred House with the Northeast Fishing Report. If the federal government is still shut down by the time you are hearing this report, all boat ramps located on U.S. Forest Service property are closed at Cave Run Lake. At Grayson Lake, most of the ramps remain open except the ramp near the marina. It is a fantastic time to fish for muskie right now at Cave Run Lake, as the water temperature is in the upper 60s. Muskie fishing in streams should be a good bet right now, and I would suggest giving some of the Kentucky river pools a shot, such as Pool 10, where you have pretty good boat access using a Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife boat ramp located in Madison County at the end of Route 977. At this time, those streams slated for rainbow trout stocking in October within the district have not been stocked due to the government shutdown. Good luck and stay safe.
This is Rob Rold in the Northwestern Fishery District with an update on fishing opportunities in our area. Rough River Lake and Nolin River Lake are both right around Summer Pool. Rough River Lake is about 1.5 feet above Summer Pool. Nolin is a few inches above, but the recent heavy rains are sure to bring both these reservoirs up. Bass are being caught in the normal deep summertime habitats using soft plastic baits and jigs, especially along the deeper main lake and secondary tributary creek channels. Crappie are being caught both deep and shallow. Ohio and Green Rivers, because of the recent rains over the weekend, are several feet above normal pool and muddy, so not very much going on the way on our rivers at all. That's an update from the Northwestern District. Good luck on the water. Please always remember to wear your life jacket.
It's Kentucky Afield Radio, and we head east to God's Country with Kevin Fry, the fisheries biologist there, right after the break.
Deer in the headlights. Watch out, Mr. Deer.
Singing with your kids in the car is one way to keep deer hazard season in mind. And should a deer catch your headlights, flash those lights, sound your horn, break its concentration to scurry it along.
There's one.
And where there's one, there may be 2 or 3 more. Deer hazard season runs through November, so be wise behind the wheel while nature runs its course. A message from Fish and Wildlife and the Kentucky Office of Highway Safety. Charlie Baglin back on Kentucky Afield Radio. We're going to head east to Dewey Lake, Buckhorn Lake, Paintsville Lake, Carr Fork. And Kevin Fry, district biologist, with so many places to fish, where do you start?
For fall fishing, there's quite a few streams that are pretty good for smallmouth, rock bass. With the reservoirs in the fall, especially early fall, what gets talked about the most is usually your catfish, black bass, and your crappie.
Where have you been sampling?
Mostly on the larger reservoirs for looking at black bass, the largemouth in particular.
Do you know enough that you can talk about what you've been seeing?
Most of the lakes, such as the fish trap, Dewey that you mentioned, and the others, the largemouth and the smallmouth both are really targeting the backs of the coves and actually right into the creek mouths. The shad are really congregated there, and sometimes I think the water doesn't look like too much to fishermen because it's so shallow, but there's a good number of large fish there.
How close alike are those lakes, the 4 or 5 that we mentioned? And what I'm wondering is the shocking data that you get from one lake, how close does that mirror another lake?
The data we get, it will be a little different lake to lake, but we've done it for enough years that if you, about any of our lakes, you can look at electrofishing data back to the mid-'80s. And our numbers fit pretty good patterns if you look at Yatesville over the years, which Yatesville just goes back to 94, I think. But Dewey, Fish Trap, the numbers are pretty consistent. There can be a few ups and downs. But now when you go from one lake, say maybe a Buckhorn Lake to a Dewey Lake, the numbers or the fish per hour we catch may totally be different between those 2 lakes.
I was talking to John Williams, who is in charge of Lake Cumberland, and he says a lot of the recreational boating traffic by now is gone, and the anglers pretty much have taken over. How much recreational traffic is there on your lakes?
It's similar in this district also. A lot of the recreational is over with the kids getting back started in school. Actually, at the lakes here, at times now, half of the boating may be out there for fishing and the other half out for hunting with the WMAs on the lakes.
Mm-hmm. That does make sense. Granted, eastern Kentucky's a big area, but where do you like to go?
It's probably going to be biased because sometimes I'll do it just for the shorter travel, but usually I go to Dewey and Yatesville. For where my home is, it's just shorter travel for me. If I was closer, because of the sampling we do, I really like Fish Trap and Buckhorn too. It's just a lot more travel for me, so I end up fishing Dewey and Yatesville. You know,
I said eastern Kentucky, but that also takes in part of the northeast, where Cave Run is. That is not your lake. What are your counties?
Our farthest north county would be Lawrence. We go south to Harlan County, and then out to Breathitt, Magoffin County, and there's 12 counties in the districts that I work.
I was wondering, is fall a time of the year where you want to go to a tried and true area to fish, or is this the time of year where you can sort of seek out a hidden spot? What's the advice there?
With fall here, the black bass or your largemouth bass, spotted bass, your black and white crappie, your channel catfish, flathead catfish, you can actually start seeking out places from summer where you are fishing deeper water to shallow shoreline water and open mud flats that are shallow. A lot of our lakes here, the upper lakes, at times will congregate pretty heavy numbers of the bass, catfish, and crappie.
If you were to see someone pulling a boat down the mountain parkway and they were heading towards your part of the woods, where would you suspect they'd be going? What are the hot spots in eastern Kentucky?
I would expect fish trap, dewey, and then, of course, some could be buckhorn. Each one of those lakes is kind of for different species, though.
Is there muskie in your area?
Yes, that'd be the one attracting people to pull a boat to buckhorn would be the muskie.
What water temperature are you looking at there before the muskie really turn on?
We're kind of past it now. The one time a year that really congregates good numbers of muskie and the anglers' catch rates are higher than any other time of year is July and August, the hottest times. There at Buckhorn, a lot of the muskie will want to travel up out of the lake into the river, and the water temp's just a couple of degrees cooler, but what that does is attract shad by the thousands up in that area, and the muskie just congregate right around those shad.
Yeah, they're chasing dinner.
Yeah.
So what would you suspect then, if muskie are taken out of the equation, what is the hot fish?
At Buckhorn, the other good fishery that's really popular would be the white crappie. At this time of year, it's just like at the other area lakes. They're schooled in really high numbers in shallow water over the mud flat areas. Buckhorn, where it's a long, narrow lake, what a lot of anglers like to do is troll a jig or a small crankbait across those mud flats till they hook a fish, and they kind of use that maybe plus with a depth finder locating the fish.
There are a lot of trout where you live.
Yes.
In your district, what's the name of the trout stream? Forgive me.
In Floyd County, left fork of Beaver Creek.
Fall is certainly a good time to fish for the trout. Where are they being stocked?
A lot of our tailwaters get too hot in the summer, so we go for maybe a 3-month period where they don't get stocked. Some can get started up in September, but most we have to wait till October. But in October, then, we got a lot of tailwaters getting trout, plus a few streams mixed in.
Doesn't the Kentucky Fish and Wildlife website have the stocking dates?
Yes. In our fishing and boating guide, the anglers could pick up at Walmart or bait stores. It's going to have that listing for the tailwaters in the streams and the lakes also.
We're talking about fall fishing in eastern Kentucky, but just because the calendar says it's fall, you can have fall in September, and you can have fall again in late December, all the way up to, the 20th, 21st? What are the optimum times in there, do you think? They're in the mountainous area for the best fishing.
September and October is really great for the catfishing, flatheads, end channels. The blue catfish is a new fishery at Dewey, but it's really taken on and doing well, and it's also really good in October. White and black crappie, sometimes some of the anglers turn more into hunters at that time of year, but and it can be really cold too, but November and December can be really good for the crappie, actually still in shallow water and in the upper parts of the lakes.
What kind of changes would a fisherman make fishing your area this fall versus coming off of summer fishing?
Usually it helps, you don't have to be so particular or patient with the presentation, but usually going into fall, largemouth, the smallmouth, crappie, the catfish, they all become more aggressive, and maybe from finesse with plastics and using jigs, you can go to some crankbaits and some spinner baits and have a faster retrieve.
I know with all of the water that is in eastern Kentucky that you have to have somebody over there stretching the truth about what they've caught. And I'm wondering what the best tall tale you have heard told over the summer has been. Can you recall any?
I'm not sure it's the tallest tale, but one recent that I can think of with all the extra work we're doing right now at night. Sometimes while we're out there working, we're sampling bass here recent. Bass angler was looking at some of the fish we'd sampled, and he looked in the live well there, and he's like, good golly, that bass is huge. and he was asking us how much it weighed, and we was telling him, that's probably just a 2.5 pounder. And he's like, no, I'm a bass fisherman, that's 5 pounds. And right away, he's on the phone, he'd snapped a picture of it, calling his buddy, telling him that he'd seen 5 pound bass.
And it was one that you had shocked up?
Yeah, and it actually just weighed 2.5, but he's like, no, I'm a bass fisherman, that's got to be 5 pounds.
He knows for a fact. Kentucky fishing will make a liar out of you. You can't help but to stretch the truth to get others out there, make others jealous.
Yeah.
Your office exists to make fishing better for the fisherman, the fisherwoman. Where can folks come knock on your door?
Our office is at Dewey Lake, and our office is down lake from the Jenny Wiley State Park Lodge in Marina. For our fishery staff, we have myself and 2 other employees, and there's also usually 1 wildlife staff that's at this office too.
Gotcha. So somebody's going to be there. Should an angler want to stop in and take advantage of your resources, be someone there to greet them?
Yeah. I'd say 9 out of 10 times that's going to be true. Sometimes we'll all be out, but most of the time someone's here.
What are your office hours?
8 to 4:30.
And when they get there,
we can help them out with fish attractor locations. We try to keep lake maps. We can also just provide them information, too, on what some of the recent fishing reports are that we've heard. And if we're also sampling, we got electrofishing data that we can tell them about, too.
Got to ask this question. A lot of twisty roads where you live. Do you text and drive?
No. That'd be about impossible here. Reception... You got reception on one side of the hill, and the other side of the hill you don't. It's in and out all the time, too.
Yeah, so it may not be even worth the effort to try.
Yeah.
Well, before we go, any last sage piece of advice for anyone wanting to come to your area?
One tidbit I'll throw in. This year I've been really impressed. One lake with the amount of big fish reports we've gotten that it'd be with the flathead catfish and the channel catfish at Fish Trap Lake. Just seems like it's producing big fish way out of proportion to what it has in the past and what some of the other lakes here produce.
We've been talking with Kevin Fry, the district fisheries biologist in eastern Kentucky. We have another segment left. We will take a little bit of detour from fishing and talk about other things fall. Stay with us. This is Kentucky Afield Radio. This is Kentucky Afield Radio. Charlie Baglin back. This is our last segment of the show, and we want to fit a few things in. A couple of good dog stories, maybe, at least one. I want to give you some advice on catch and release trout stream season. Opened October 1st and goes through end of March. First up, I want to go back to when Kentucky Afield was a little bitty short show. But even though this is many years old now, what is said is still very, very true. A few things you may not have realized about the season of fall.
Inside Autumn, this week on Kentucky Afield Radio. Nights are cooler. Days are shorter. Leaves are changing color. It's fall. These are obvious signs, but there are others often overlooked. Some subtle, some not, but ones that are just as certain that there is a change of season. And it's what we discover by watching wildlife.
This time of year, lots of birds that spent the summer in Kentucky are leaving. So when you see the huge flocks of grackles and red-winged blackbirds and starlings, you know that fall is in the air.
Tim Sloan is a wildlife biologist. This time of year, he says, wildlife has one thing on its mind, and that's gearing up to survive winter. That's often no small job. It can require storing energy for hibernation, gathering nuts, or gathering bearings for flying south. What triggers the whole process, Tim says, is the simple fact that the days are getting shorter. From changes in leaf pigmentation to mallard migrations, every wild living thing gets in on the act.
You may see mockingbirds actively defending some tree in your yard that has small fruit on it, and the mockingbirds are just chasing the other birds off and really beating up on them, and that's their way of ensuring survival through the winter.
It's fall in our backyards and in the backwoods. Squirrels.
They're on a mission because they've got to store enough food so that they make it through the winter. So they're gathering nuts and storing them. You see chipmunks with their cheek pouches just bulging with nuts.
We know it's fall by what we see and by what we don't see.
There's a lot of animals that we're just not going to see. I mean, groundhogs are going to be hibernating. Bats will be hibernating. The songbirds, the warblers, a lot of the really brightly colored birds are gone. Hummingbirds are gone. The insects are obviously not around once cold weather starts. You won't see frogs, you won't see turtles, you won't see snakes.
So it sounds like everything is settling down or moving south.
Well, some things are settling down. Some animals get a lot more active. It's breeding season for a lot of animals. Deer, for instance. Males will be looking for females, and there'll be deer running all over the place.
Fall is in the air and in the water.
A lot of fish start feeding really aggressively. That's why fishing is a lot better in the fall. They've got to store up enough energy now to make it through the winter when it really gets cold.
And speaking of cold, migrating birds to our state from the northern latitudes also tell us of autumn's arrival. Ducks, geese, sandhill cranes, and even bald eagles, as we begin to see them.
Makes you feel like fall is here.
It's more than a page on a calendar, or a time of year when we rake leaves. It's a season that brings out the best in wildlife, and reminds us of how hardy and able wildlife is, and must be, to survive. It's time to put on our coats and tip our hats to creatures great and small, and to fall.
Charlie Baglin back. Catch and release trout stream season is underway. Has been since the first day of October. Goes through the 31st of March. And that's for all streams except Swift Camp Creek. It goes till the end of May. So this is the season where you can fish for trout till you turn blue, but you can't keep them. This is catch and release. I was talking to Jeff Crosby. He is the Central District fisheries biologist with the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife. And I said, Jeff, how much are those trout going to grow between October 1st and end of March? And he said, depending on the forage, that they could go at least half, and some may even get close to doubling in size. So can you imagine the good trout fishing there is going to be on April 1st? We have on the schedule for Kentucky Afield Radio a trout expert. His name is Dave Dreves, and he is going to talk about these catch-and-release trout streams, where they are, and some things to look forward to when you get there. We at Kentucky Afield Radio, and especially Tim Farmer, he'll say it every week on Kentucky Afield TV. I will quote him. He says, remember, hunting and fishing on private land is a privilege. Always ask permission and remember to thank the landowner. There is a lot going on Kentucky Afield Radio this fall. We'll talk about turkey, bear, and coyote hunting. Something coming up on the show later in the fall is something called Real Recovery. It's an opportunity for any man who has been stricken with cancer, that is recovering and would like to get out and try something new. We'll also talk about deer season and elk season with that program's coordinator, Dr. Tina Brunges. And we'll try to sneak in a few more conversations with the district biologist around the state about fall fishing. And something coming up for Thanksgiving that I hope comes about. Thanksgiving is about family, and I am going to talk with two guests, and they're both named Charlie Baglin. We are the only three Charlie Baglins currently in existence anywhere on the planet. They are two very distant cousins of mine, and they're down south in Mississippi. I hope they can understand my Kentucky accent. But they love the outdoors. They have a thing there on there called the gator harvest. I want to hear more about that. They hunt alligators. So I'm hoping to have Charlie Baglin and his son Charlie Baglin on the show for Thanksgiving. Cross your fingers. Clock is ticking. We'll get to as many of these good dog stories as we can. Here we go. The bond between dog and master goes beyond the grave. The story reads, Miguel Guzman is from Argentina, and his dog is named Captain. Miguel Guzman died in military service. The dog went missing for a few days, and he was eventually found at the cemetery where Guzman was buried. Again, what's remarkable is that Miguel had died in a hospital. His body was taken to a funeral home from there, and Captain had never been to the cemetery before, never knew where the grave was. First time the funeral director saw Captain, he arrived at the cemetery by himself. Dog did a few laps through the tombstones, and eventually he found his master's grave. I don't know, scent, what? I don't know. Maybe the dog can read. I'm not sure. And Captain continues to visit his old master's grave every day at 6 p.m., just like clockwork. Just shows to go ya, what I've always said is true, there is nothing better than a dog. We are out of time. My name is Charlie Baglin, inviting you to join us again in a week. We will go inside outdoors again, right here on Kentucky Afield Radio.